is the parable of the two foundations. Jesus said, "Everybody who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise builder who built a house on bedrock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against the house. It didn't fall because it was firmly set on bedrock. But everybody who hears these words of mine and doesn't put them into practice will be like a fool who built a house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house. It fell and was completely destroyed."
Well, this is a pretty familiar and relatively easy idea to understand. You build your house on bedrock, it will stand. You build it on sand, and as the children's song we learned in Sunday school or vacation Bible school, when the rains came down and the floods came up, when the rains came down and the floods came up, when the rains came down and the floods came up, splat. Down it went, and terrible was its fall. And it's just cute, it's a great idea, but what does it actually mean? What is bedrock and what is sand? So the very first line of our reading today, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. So obviously we need to know what are these words. Therefore the whole idea of foolish builders, wise builders can't be understood without what precedes it. And in this case, it's the 2 chapters that follow his famous Sermon on the Mount. From the Sermon on the Mount, he came down the mountain and told his followers, "Now do not think I came to abolish the law and the prophets." And then he repeats over and over again and again, "You have heard that it was said, but I say to you." You have heard that it was said, but I say to you. For example, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said that you shall not murder, but I say to you." Murder is the same as being angry with your brother or sister. Now, anger, that is, that doesn't come with the determination to resolve your differences. For the next 2 chapters, Jesus repeats this over and over again and again about such things as fasting and prayer and adultery and divorce and making oaths and retaliation. You know, on retaliation, he said, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer." And then he goes on to offer this brilliant lesson on civil disobedience against the Roman occupation. He's not talking here about being a doormat. He's talking about subversive tactics like turning the other cheek and going the 2nd mile and giving not only your coat but your cloak as well, which means you'd be standing naked in front of the judge. He doesn't offer wisdom about being a doormat, but a lesson in civil disobedience, but that's a whole other sermon for another day. Jesus continues, "You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." In the midst of all this, Jesus says, do not worry. Look at the birds of the air. Can worrying add a single hour to your life? Stop worrying about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. And one of my favorite lines, today's trouble is enough for today. So chapter after chapter, verse after verse, many of these things are familiar. Do not judge and you will not be judged. He said, ask and it shall be given, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. These are familiar lines. And then Jesus concludes, in everything, do as the prophets, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. For this is the law and the prophets. Remember at the beginning he said, I didn't come to abolish them. He said, this is what that means. And then, that's when he said, and everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like the wise builder. And And if you don't, splat. Eugene Peterson translates our passage today very inventively. He said, "These words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life. They are not homeowner improvements to your standard of living. These are foundational words, words to build a life on." But again, not just hearing the words, but acting on them. It's wisdom for living. And more importantly today, wisdom for a marriage. So every Thursday, a group gathers for lunch at Noodles and Company to discuss the reading for Sunday. And those of us who gathered on Thursday represented marriages of 57 years, 50 years, and 13 years. So imagine, sitting around this table, I have 120 years of lived experience upon which to draw. Ask for their wisdom. What has made your marriage work? And they called out forgiveness, patience, respect, honesty, kindness, love, a shared value system, and the willingness to ignore bad habits, like socks left on the bathroom floor again. But you know what? Honestly, I was a little disappointed that there were no big surprises in this list. In fact, the advice is so universally true. You can exchange out the word marriage and use it to explain how to be a friend, or even how to live next door to your neighbor. Right? Forgiveness and patience, respect, honesty, kindness, love, a shared value system about being neighborly, and the willingness to ignore a few bad habits. It can also explain why we are so divided as a nation. Forgiveness, patience, respect, honesty. How about that shared value system? How about kindness? There's not a lot of that going around these days, but there's plenty of what Jesus called foolishness, right? Anger, desire for retaliation, lots of enemy-making, and judgment. Among our lunch on Thursday, none of the words for wisdom, words of wisdom for marriage, weren't particularly earth-shattering, but there were 3 more additional lessons that did stick out to me. Taking time apart from each other, willingness to sacrifice for the happiness of your partner, not expecting them to make you happy, and 57 years later, still feeling passionate for your partner. Rosalind and Jimmy Carter have now been married more than 73 years. Rosalind, 3 years younger, lived down the street from Jimmy's family and had a crush on him. Well, one time Jimmy was home on leave from the Navy, and he was busy every night with a beauty queen, an actual pageant winner. But on his last night, the beauty queen had other plans, so Jimmy, Rosalind, and his younger sister June, who had been trying to set them up all along, all went to the movies together. And the next morning, Jimmy told his mother he was going to marry Rosalind. And when he asked her only 2 months later, on President's Day weekend of all times, she said no. And she had promised her dying father to finish college first. But after she did, they married on October 19th, 1946. And 73 years later, they still walk down the street together holding hands. Now, there are lots of lists you can Google, like 8 keys for success or 10 signs of a good marriage. One notably different article was entitled, "The 3 Pillars of a Successful Marriage," and love is not one of them. I was curious, so I read on, and the author cited integrity, respect, and endurance. And I thought, endurance may be true, but that isn't quite the most motivational thing. You just have to endure. But the article ends with the postscript of inviting God into your marriage, and God is love. So sometimes I learn more from examining an issue from the opposite side, so I Googled foolish marriage advice. And one promising article chronicled the worst advice offered from every decade. In 1900, it was the wife to never be smarter than her husband. Yeah, at first it seemed funny, or funny-ish. In the 1940s, don't talk about your problems. In the 1970s, don't be a nag. And then I realized how unfunny this whole thing was and how much damage has been done through the decades by such sexist and misogynistic advice, always directed to the woman. And by the time I finished, I wasn't just sad, I was angry. But then again, what did I expect from Googling foolish marriage advice? Which makes me feel a little foolish for trying. But Barbara Essex offers the best interpretation of this passage and says it's all about the storms. The test of a house's strength comes only during bad weather. Although the roof looks fine, there's no way of knowing how sound it is until the rains come. Although the basement is cozy and spacious, there's no way of knowing how sealed it really is until the floods flow. And although the windows look great, there's no way of knowing how strong they are until the winds blow. The strength of the house does not appear until the storms come. And storms come, don't they? And then where do we turn? The wisdom of our friends with 120 years of lived experience made it through. Because of forgiveness and patience. You might even say they needed a good dose of endurance. And yet sometimes the only wise thing to do is to end the relationship. I was raised in the United Methodist Church. On Friday, a protocol for separation was agreed to by the diverse interests entangled in 4 decades of conflict over the place of LGBTQ people in the church and same-sex marriage. The method and means for divorce have been agreed to. And as anyone who's been divorced knows, it's not what anyone wants, but sometimes it is what everyone needs for health and wholeness, for human flourishing, to be restored. Now, the document released on Friday is called Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation. I want to read that again. Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation. And I was really moved by that title, to imagine that grace can be the outcome of separation. That's profound. And it's probably a lived experience some of you can attest to. Going forward, if this protocol is adopted by the larger body in May, those who wish to punish clergy who perform same-gender weddings or prohibit LGBTQ clergy from their pulpits are free to leave the denomination and form their own, including an equitable division of the assets. And instead of this being a sad day, frankly, everyone can now finally breathe a sigh of relief that the means for separation have been set, which is perhaps an odd topic for a day celebrating a marriage. But it is a realistic assessment of the kinds of wise and foolish choices we must make sometimes. Because it could actually be quite foolish, if not outright dangerous, to stay together under certain conditions. But of course, that isn't always possible. I mean, we can't divorce our country, right? And it's been raining a lot lately. And there's more rain in the forecast, and torrential rains are coming down, and Noah's Ark-sized floods are coming up, and gale-force winds are banging on the shutters, and you wonder, will we go splat? We wonder, will the foundations set by our founders hold up? The rule of law, fidelity to the Constitution, representative government of the people, by the people, for the people. Something as seemingly simple as truth. about anger and retaliation and judgment and even worrying seem particularly apt and splat-worthy. And yet, might the lesson from the text today not be that our house won't blow off the foundation because of laws, but because in the hearts of the people, we hold open the possibility that one day we will forgive each other. And if not today, that we choose to refuse to close the door to the hope of reconciliation one day. That we will be patient and respect one another, be honest with each other, be kind to each other, and love our neighbor, not despite the fact that they may be like enemies to us, but because Jesus said it's wise to love one another as much as we love ourselves. Of course, there's also that matter of overlooking the socks left on the bathroom floor again. Amen. We are here